Okay, so before I get carried away by criticizing Outriders, I've got to give credit where it's due. Outriders is a very fun game with simple yet fluid and interweaving gameplay mechanics that make most firefights pretty damn exciting. I've only played 2 of the 4 classes so far, but I can say confidently that they both work well, standing on their own and adding a unique take to your squad. It's a game that I'd highly recommend to anyone who likes action games, but certainly not at full price. As much as I'd love to recommend Outriders on gameplay alone, it's pulled down by a sloppy narrative. The approach to this game feels like the developers are clinging onto a bygone era of gaming, not learning from others' failures. Firstly though, the launch, at least on PC, was disastrous, with what I'm presuming was developers People Can Fly's ill-preparedness. For the first few days, the servers would go down or randomly disconnect you after 2 minutes of gameplay, assuming you could get on at all. It seems to have settled down as player count stabilised, but there are still the occasional issues. My co-op partner had the recurring problem with ending NPC conversations crashing the game, which led them to be left behind a little by losing out on rewards and XP. Both of these issues are consequences of being an online-only game, by the way. Even the level design, especially being a looter shooter, is often lackluster, feeling restrictively linear with most dead ends or nooks and crannies lacking any substance, which makes exploration, or what you can try to explore, feel pointless. The combat is certainly repetitive, but the abilities and gunplay keep it mostly fun, although I have had NPCs be alerted even though I'm miles from their line of sight, and I've even had them damage me without any animation, which was pretty weird. Despite the interesting difficulty system with the world tiers, the AI very rarely approaches firefights with smarter tactics than that of the grunts from the original Halo, often just charging at you and overwhelming you with numbers. There are even times where the HUD would fail to load in, which I guess can kind of work with immersion, but not allowing me to aim down a scope properly, that just breaks it immediately. But these things are more nitpicks that disengage the experience and will most likely improve with later patches. The thing that took me out of the experience was the way the world and the story was laid out. As I previously mentioned, the gameplay is really quite fun, but due to the approach People Can Fly have taken with the narrative, I don't see Outriders having much of a long-term legacy. There's a serious oversaturation of cutscenes, which can sometimes work in a unique narrative perspective, like, I guess, the Metal Gear Solid games, but the way they're implemented here just disconnects the gameplay from the story. Call of Duty games, and even Final Fantasy or Kingdom Hearts have been pretty bad for this, but often they're utilised in some positive way. Call of Duty often imitates cinema, and taking control for certain moments can help guide the player to the next cinematic set piece. Whereas Kingdom Hearts uses it to show off new areas, allowing any player, no matter how old or young, to take in the environment and path their course before venturing into the level. In Outriders, well, it harkens back to a time where almost every mid-range action video game would rely on cutscenes not only as a narrative crutch, but one to just straight up take out creative gameplay opportunities, removing control and fluidity from the player. Like this perfectly warranted action moment that totally deserves a cutscene to show our character jumping over a small gap. I know they did this partially due to, the lack of jumping in the game, but come on, surely there'd be a way to attach an animation of jumping across to, like the mantle cover button? After fast-paced action and intense firefights, to just fading to black and getting these little cutscenes just halts any momentum gained. Animations for some interactions are present outside of the cutscenes, but the game just can't decide what artistic direction it wants to hold on to, and ends up making everything involving the narrative and character flow jankily. The developers have come out and stated that the reason for so many cutscenes is due to the nature of the co-op in the game. All players need to be in the gameplay area at once, and the cutscenes are to give the players a better sense of where they are. But we're still teleported away, and are given plenty of context within the backdrops of the clipping regions and loading screens for where we're travelling to next. The Outriders directive and creative leads have spoken out stating that it's not an ideal solution and admit it could have been implemented better. If it had, their hard work on refining the gameplay that Outriders has been marketed heavily on would have paid off, but as it is, you shouldn't go in expecting a compelling narrative with characters that you'll care about. Because at the end of the day, even if the performances and writing had been top tier, the way things are choppily edited and thrown into the middle of the gameplay puts every cutscene on equal footing, meaning that the more pivotal scenes won't have your total attention after being bombarded with a bunch of mundane cutscenes. I mean, it even sorta has those boring ass assassination cutscenes before you kill a boss, like in Assassin's Creed. At least it doesn't have takedown cutscenes with over the top quips like Rogue Warrior though. I think the game had buckets full of potential, and with the right direction, could have been a next tentpole sci-fi game. But for me, I don't see it as lasting the test of time. It may hold its own better than Anthem, Marvels Avengers, or some other looter-shooter online games, but I don't think we'll still be talking about it in a couple of years. The forgettable narrative and the way it's presented is at the core of that. If you have fond memories of Two Human, Binary Domain, or any of those mid-range 360 PS3 era action games, you might be able to get past the narrative hiccups, but otherwise, I'd suggest waiting for a sale. It's not quite a Mass Effect or a Destiny, or unique enough to be a Borderlands. It's just sort of an awkward blip that could have been so much more, but a fun blip nonetheless. Thank you very much for watching this little Outriders review. I've been playing it loads recently, and it is a really fun game, as I said, but the narrative really lets it down, so I'd certainly get it eventually, or if you've got it in Game Pass, play on that. I do have bigger videos in the pipeline, so make sure to stay tuned and hit that bell if you've not done so. My name is Andrew, or Stalli111. Make sure to drop a like, drop a comment, and subscribe if you've not done so already. And I'll see you on the next video. Bye bye.